In the not-too-distant future, there will only be madmen. Mad Max, the maximum force of the future.
I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
The first Gene starts with a weird and violent fantasy of the future. This one is called Road Warrior.
The Road Warrior is one of the most original movies I've ever seen. It's exciting, imaginative, and very strange. The Road Warrior is set in the near future in Australia following World War III, which has left the countryside desolate, save for wandering gangs looking for the world's most precious commodity now, gasoline. And battles for gasoline is what this movie is about, showing us people struggling to survive in this barren land. In this scene, a bunch of nice people try to defend themselves against a roving gang of thieves. Leading the good guys is a reluctant hero named Max, who sure knows how to drive a truck. Well, you've got the central image in this movie. That's one vehicle rolling over another or a human being. George Miller is the director of The Road Warrior, and his imagination that forms the distinctive look of this film, of the world in The Road Warrior, which is sort of a cross between Death Valley and a punk nightmare. I've seen a lot of car chases in my years as a film critic, but nothing quite like the action in this movie. This is one of those pictures where you watch these stunts and you keep saying, I don't know how they do it. Obviously, this film is extremely violent, but for some reason it never bothered me because the violence is presented in an almost comic book manner. You can't take it seriously. What also holds our attention is one of the wildest assortment of characters I've ever seen. You notice that little mongrel boy. Max is also sort of a cross between Steve McQueen and Martin Sheen, and the villains defy description. This is a truly original and most entertaining movie.
My head was ringing when I walked out of the theater. I was absolutely drained. I didn't have the strength to push the elevator button. This movie is non-stop for 2 hours, total, flat-out action and violence. And as you say, comic book violence. I don't know how they did the stunts either. I thought I was looking at shots that were not faked, in which people had to be killed. I assume they weren't, or we would have heard about it. But the special effects in the movie are sensational. The pacing is amazing.
The music is non-stop, wall-to-wall music. It drives you as you're sitting there in your seat. Some of the action is obviously over-cranked so that we're getting speeded up footage, but it is very powerful. And I also enjoyed some of the twists of the plot. Characters die that you don't think are going to die. Relationships, I'll give you one. I was certain that there was going to be a male-female romance scene in the picture. I just expected it. It's standard in this sort of thing. Not one. And it's set up, never happens.
It's real tough at 120 miles an hour.
Right, well, I know. But the surprises in this film, I think, are so good.
Yeah. And he makes an entire world. You're right. He makes an apocalyptic post-World War III world that is, it's not convincing, really, intellectually, but it's convincing in terms of the movie.
Certainly. Both Roger and I enjoyed The Road Warrior, George Miller's futuristic fantasy, a journey into violence, the likes of which you've probably never seen before. Most everyone over the age of 20 remembers with relish the marvelous TV adventures into time and space called The Twilight Zone. Very clever and very scary stuff they were. And so a bunch of young film directors in Hollywood have gotten together to film the ultimate tribute. 4 25-minute episodes, sort of. The directors are Joe Dante, John Landis, Steven Spielberg, and George Miller. Now, the scariest episode is the last of the 4, directed by George Miller of Mad Max fame. It tells a story of an airplane passenger deathly afraid of flying. How would you like that to be your in-flight movie, The Twilight Zone? Take another flight. That was John Lithgow, and he's terrific in this little story. The reason this section works the best of the 4 is that it, more than the others, I think, convinces us that we've really entered another world, which was the whole secret of the show. I also somewhat like the story about a woman traveler visiting a weird family full of human cartoon people, and the moral parable about racism that opens the film. It's okay. So, on balance, an okay movie, just barely okay.
I would say it's just barely not okay. I didn't like either one of the first 2 segments. John Landis's thing about racism I thought was very predictable. Yeah, I agree with you. Spielberg was the disappointing low point.
Amazing.
The 2 lesser-known directors, Joe Dante, who has that part where the traveler goes into the strange people in the roadside house,
it's kind of neat.
And then George Miller of The Road Warrior with the scene that we just saw. Those were good, but on the whole, I would say I couldn't recommend the movie.
Well, we both agree it's sort of 50-50 on the 4 segments. The thing that tips it over into positive for me is the opening thing with Dan Aykroyd, the introduction to the 4 segments. Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks, they're very funny, and they come back at the end just barely enough to make a recommendation.
Wouldn't you say, with all the tradition of The Twilight Zone, they could have come up with 4 episodes, 4 strong ones instead of 2?
I wish they had.
We return to the post-World War III world of Mad Max, a world where water and fuel and gentle people are all in short supply.
Have been energetically directed by George Miller, but they've been previously known just as action pictures. This one, however, has a lyrical side in the middle and at the end, as well as a great sense of humor and a great sense of fashion, punk style.
Thunderdome. 2 men, hand to hand. No jury, no appeal, no parole. 2 men enter, 1 man leave.
Weapons? Anything's possible. Chance decides. Thunderdome. How do I get in there?
That's easy. Pick a fight. Welcome to another edition of
Well, it sure beats Family Feud, although actually that is sort of a little family there, and there is quite a feud with an amazing battle sequence. Max is going to have to do her bidding and defeat a cruel monster known as the Master Blaster, which is a big guy on the bottom and a little guy on top. This you got to see. Then he's going to serve later in the film as protector to a group of surviving innocent young people before once again he has to do battle, as he always does in his films, out on the open desert road. Now, that sort of looks like the other two Mad Max films, but this one really has a lot more going for it than those two. Kids are going to want toys out of this film. People are going to dress like out of this film.
I think Tina Turner probably was able to dress out of her own clothes closet and report directly to
I think they may have recruited some people from the London tube stops that I've seen on my last trip there. What is amazing to me is when a director successfully creates a complete alien world on film, unlike anything we've seen before, and director Miller, working with co-director George Ogilvy, certainly has done that. Mad Max is his name, Beyond Thunderdome, is a great, violent, fun picture.
It is I think it's even better than that. I think it's going to go on my list of the 10 best films of the year. I was overwhelmed by the wealth of new ideas they came up with in the third picture. You'd think it'd be a recycled
that's what I thought, yeah.
idea. The whole idea of the Thunderdome gives them two things I've never seen in an action picture before: a new place to put the audience, which is over the top of the dome, and a new way to fight by putting the people on elastic bands, so they have a 3- or a 4-dimensional, if you will, fight instead of regular punching it out. And then you didn't mention the power source of Thunderdome, which is methane gas from the pigs who live in the basement. Now, that alone...
Well, that was very clever and very, very funny. I also like, remember that film, The Man with the Incredible Two Brains, or Incredible Two Heads? What
was
was
Man
that?
with Two Brains?
I don't know what it was.
The Thing with Two Heads?
No, with Rosie Greer and Ray Milland.
How could I ever forget it?
Okay, now that stunk, right, as an idea with somebody
I'd agree with you.
Look at how he works it in this film. He's got a big hunk, and he's got a little midget. Now, the midget's the brains, the guy's the brawn, and it works. It's clever. I mean, this is funny stuff.
The big guy that we saw there at the beginning who was giving the rules of Thunderdome, he's like Sidney Greenstreet. This whole world is as rich as Casablanca or as rich as Oz. It is a world that has all of these characters, and now with this one, not with the other two. I can see how they can. I want to see the fourth one, and I don't like sequels. So I guess
that's a pretty high recommendation.
Guess so. And 2 more thumbs up for Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, an incredibly exciting and original action epic that I think is one of the year's best films, and I guess pretty much a toss-up as to whether you might.
Well, I like it a lot, but I'm saying Back to the Future without question.
Okay. 7th place, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, a great-looking, high-style thriller, the best of the Road Warrior movies.
When we come back, Jack Nicholson stars as a diabolical character who grants the wishes of the Witches of Eastwick.
Are you going to seduce me too?
Of Eastwick, and it's based on John Updike's novel about 3 Connecticut housewives who would like a little more excitement in their lives, and they get a lot more than they really bargained for. As the 3 so-called witches, the movie stars here, from left to right, Susan Sarandon, Cher, and Michelle Pfeiffer, who get to thinking one day about what kind of a man they'd like to meet.
A stranger, that would be interesting. A tall, dark prince traveling under a curse.
They say you ought to be careful about what you ask for because you just might get it. And that's what happens to them when a strange man named Darrell Van Horn turns up in town. He's played by Jack Nicholson. This guy has the strange ability to read your mind. He's able to tell each woman exactly what she wants to hear.
Do you know the entire witchcraft scare? I mean, is Christ as far back as the 14th century was started by the medical profession? That's right. They were trying to get midwives out of the child-birthing business. That's what they were. Most of the women that they burned, midwives.
Is that true?
You better believe it. Just another example of male-dominated professional society exploiting females for their own selfish purposes.
And there's that famous Nicholson smirk. Eventually, the 3 women decide they were happier when they were bored, and they use voodoo to try to get rid of Nicholson.
And, some chocolate chip.
You okay? No, my leg.
What is it?
The Witches of Eastwick is an odd, strange goofball movie, and I liked it a lot. It's not afraid to be eccentric, and it isn't afraid to allow all of its actors to really stretch into the kinds of people we don't see every day,
no kidding.
Especially in Eastwick. It's quite possible that no actor except Jack Nicholson in the whole world could have played the role of Darrell Van Horn, certainly quite this way, the devil who comes to live in Eastwick. He has a way of raising those eyebrows and giving us that big, diabolical grin, and we know he's capable of anything, literally. And as for Susan Sarandon, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Cher, they're like a trio. Their timing is wonderful. They're great when they're playing Nicholson's foils, and at the end of the movie, when they get their revenge, you can almost feel the fun they're having. And I had a whole lot of fun, too.
I had a whole lot of fun for, I'd say, about 2/3 of the movie. And Nicholson, I mean, he's a national treasure now. I think he is our biggest star. I think he's going to last for centuries. I mean, he is.
Decades for sure.
When he goes sliding across the bed in his pajamas as the devil, I mean, that's just a beautiful scene. That's just wonderful. Then at the end of the picture, they start to use some special effects and gloppy stuff and twisting bodies and stuff that comes out of horror films. And I felt badly that they did that with Jack Nicholson, because Jack Nicholson doesn't need special effects. I said this about Eddie Murphy in The Golden Child. He is a special effect in himself, and I don't think that he needed all of that glop at the end. Cut that out. I think you got a perfect movie.
Well, they use the special effects, but I don't think they use them the way they use them in horror films. The special effects here are more like a comedic backdrop to what's happening, rather than the subject, which is the case in horror films.
Throw them out, you still got a better picture, right?
But you recommend it, right?
You bet.
Me too. I liked it a lot.
And finally, we agreed on Witches of Eastwick, Roger liking it more than I did. We both, however, admired Jack Nicholson tremendously. 2 thumbs up.
With a couple of exceptions, Jack Nicholson throughout his career has been the guarantee that if he's in a movie, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and
not infallible, but he's up around 95%.
When we come back, Susan Sarandon and Nick Nolte play parents who cannot learn to be patient when their child is dying of a rare disease. Lorenzo's Oil is next.
We are not asking, Doctor, for your anguish or your applause. We are asking merely for a little courage.
This science of medicine, you know, it's not like physics. There's no mathematical certainty. And because we deal with human beings who suffer, it can appear heartless.
I know.
Nick Nolte there in a scene from Lorenzo's Oil, arguing with a scientist played by Peter Ustinov about an approach Nolte thinks might help to cure his son of a rare and fatal disease of the nervous system. Ustinov is sympathetic, but he argues that these things take time. And time, of course, is the one thing the boy, Lorenzo, does not have. The movie is based on a true story of parents who defied and amazed the medical establishment by finding a treatment for the disease based on such a simple thing as olive oil. Susan Sarandon plays Nolte's wife, and the couple finds that even other parents of sick children are afraid to offend the doctors.
We are merely asking you to disseminate information.
You're even going to teach the doctors back where Loretta and me come from? We call that arrogance.
Arrogance?
The disease is named adrenoleukodystrophy, or ALD, and it affects only little boys, paralyzing their nervous systems. The parents of some of the victims are in an uproar when they learn that the couple has had sensational results with their revolutionary oil treatment.
You're not going to get any insurance company and any government to support you unless you have the approval. And the only way to get the approval is through thorough testing.
That's what they told the AIDS people about AZT, but they fought for it and they got it.
Because they were dying. You didn't have time to wait for your dying. I had a loan yesterday. I want that oil.
The parents put their lives on hold to be at Lorenzo's bedside, and Sarandon's performance is heartbreaking as she demands almost superhuman performance from her son's nurses.
Well, I'm paid to nurse, not read stories.
And you've decided that his mind doesn't need as much nurturing as his body?
What mind?
Lorenzo's Oil is the kind of movie that starts slow and then gathers enormous power, sweeping you along to a conclusion that is all the more affecting because the film is based on fact. I know that the story of this disease and this treatment is an incredible exception, that most diseases are not cured just because somebody is stubborn and has a bright idea. But the story of Lorenzo and his parents is incredible all the same. It takes on a special meaning at a time when AIDS and cancer patients are also obsessed by what they see as foot-dragging by a complacent medical establishment. The movie is an emotional and intellectual triumph, and the performances by Sarandon and Nolte are risky and courageous.
Well, I'll take one exception with the last thing you said. The performance by Nolte may be courageous because he has to put on this Italian accent, but it is not a good performance. I think it's a mistake there. Every time he spoke in this film, I winced. I don't think it's very good. I think it was a mistake to try and force him into that accent completely. At the same time, you're quite right about the film. It does have a building steam quality to it. You start out and you think, this is really strange. Then you realize, if you don't know it going in, that it's a true story. You figure this has to be a true story, because who would make a movie about this subject? Yeah. And then you just get caught up in the desire. And I think it plays on a very common thing that's heartfelt, and that is an attack on a child of a disease is as awful as things get. And so you just watch with your eyes open. You can't help but have a rooting interest. She's fine, but his performance is way off.
At the beginning, I was very, very distracted by Nick Nolte with an Italian accent. I got accustomed to it.
Oh, boy, not me.
It wouldn't have bothered me a bit if they decided to make
give him an American accent and not bother with that
He's
part
a real American
of the
actor.
true story.
Yeah, he's a real American actor.
Okay. 2 thumbs up for the powerful drama Lorenzo's Oil, although Gene felt Nick Nolte's Italian accent didn't work. I agreed, but I was eventually able to accept it. And Lorenzo's Oil is a movie that, for a lot of people, is going to be a real strong experience.
And I think you're right to praise Susan Sarandon. She right now is at the top rank of American actresses on film. Okay, now my choice for number 4, and it's a children's film, or maybe just a childlike adult fantasy about an Australian pig who thinks he's a sheepdog. The movie is called Babe, and it has a unique visual style combining puppets and models and real-life animals as we see a special relationship between the pig, I can't believe I'm saying this, and the farmer who owns him. He's played beautifully by James Cromwell.
Away to me, pig.
Remember, you have to dominate them. Do that and they'll do anything you want. Go, go.
Ruff! Ruff, ruff, ruff! Ruff, 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 ruff! Move along there, you big butthead!
Why rank this film so highly? Because it's such an original piece of work. I can't recall seeing anything quite like Babe. Charming, emotional, always very funny. As a critic, what do I want most? To see things I haven't seen before. Babe is my answer.
I love the movie, too. It's tied for 11th place on my list.
Ooh.
I just couldn't quite get it into the top 10.
Try again.
I wish maybe I should have tried harder. It is a wonderful film, and it's a complete leap of the imagination. And I agree with you. It's a wonderful film.
The boss is about to lose the farm. We'll all be sent away.
And there's no telling where we'll end up. Not every human is as kind as ours.
But what can I do?
Nothing. Babe, the sheep pig, returns in triumph to the farm, only to face an immediate emergency in Babe, Pig in the City.
One rule that's rarely broken in the movie industry is the sequel is never as good as the original. Babe, Pig in the City breaks that rule. The first movie, wonderful as it was, and it was good enough to be nominated for a Best Picture Oscar, was like a dress rehearsal for this one, which is enchanting. In the new film, Farmer Hoggett is laid up after an accident, and Babe and Mrs. Hoggett go on the road to earn money. But they're stranded in the city, and just let yourself drink in the details of this cityscape, which audaciously incorporates landmarks from all over the world.
Whatever the case, in this place with its dark corners and endless possibilities, the pig felt sure he would find a way to redeem himself.
The new movie has fewer humans and more animals, although the animals seem human, too.
You got a problem, sweetie?
Who is it, honey?
It's, kind of a baldy, pinky, whitey thingy.
Show him in.
A bull terrier wants to kill Babe until the pig saves him from drowning in one of the city's canals. Then he becomes the pig's loyal lieutenant.
I'd like to offer up a solution that I feel confident you'll all respond to. Whatever the pig says, goes.
What's amazing is the way special effects, animatronic models, and real animals are combined to get these stupendously convincing and amusing shots.
If only there weren't so many of those cats.
Oh, someone slapped the dog.
Watch it!
Hey! Listen!
The chief has something to say.
Well, maybe cats and dogs could, you know, be nicer to each other.
The movie is sophisticated with wicked wit and subtle social commentary, and it's colorful and delightful and funny, too. In no way is it just a children's film, but one of the most original films of the year and one of the best, too. Babe, Pig in the City was directed, co-written, and co-produced by George Miller, who has made an even better film than the original. I was startled how much I liked it.
This is a magnificent, towering achievement. We're dazzled by it. You take any 5-10 minute section of this picture, and you think of the work that went into the construction, the physical construction, the wit of the writing, and the charm, of course, of Babe, which was so explicit in the first film and enchanting, is still in this picture, not dwarfed by the special effects.
What I like about this movie is the story, the dialogue, and the characters all use the effects instead of being the victims of the effects. And every single shot in this movie is enchanting and delightful and magical in its own way. I sat there, I thought, it's too bad adults are going to stay away from this thinking it's some talking pig movie.
Yeah, you can't get it all, possibly. It's so rich and wonderful, so you want to see it again. And I got an idea for George Miller for another sequel. Use the duck more. Make the duck, the duck is the second star in this film, that neurotic, I love him, number 3 in the series. Ferdinand.
Okay. Two very enthusiastic thumbs way up for Babe, Pig in the City. We both think it's one of the year's best films, even better than the first film, amazingly.
Now, my #1 film of the year. And my criteria for selecting my #1 pick has always been that film which best expresses the joy of filmmaking and expands the possibilities of what film can do. And the one film that clearly fits that description this year is, amazingly enough, a sequel, Babe, Pig in the City. In telling the story, director George Miller and production designer Roger Ford have fashioned a stunning set, an amalgam of many cities through which Miller runs Babe and his cohorts, including my personal favorite, Ferdinand, the neurotic duck.
Who are these losers? Ferdy! What's going on here? You look different.
Yeah, well, this place can really take it out of you.
Tell me about it. But hey, I'm with my pig. My lucky, lucky pig.
Take any 5-minute sequence of Babe, Pig in the City, and consider the choreography, the wit that had to be involved in its creation. And this choice seems obvious. Roger, do you remember how jacked up we were when we first reviewed it? We haven't been that excited about a movie in quite some time. This was an easy choice for me.
Well, it's also #7 on my list, Gene. It's a great film. It's a wonderful film. It's a magical film. It's an entertaining film. And what discourages me is that so few people went to see it, and then I keep getting letters saying, how can you recommend this movie when it frightened my 3-year-old? And I made it very clear, this is a film for adults. Don't think of it in terms of whether or not the 4-year-olds will like it. Think of it in terms of whether you will like it. Anyone who goes to the movies hoping to see something new and fresh and wonderful and enchanting is going to have a great time at this movie.
Sell it, Roger.
Okay, well, I tried to.
And the #1 film of the year, George Miller's sequel, Babe, Pig in the City.
#7, George Miller's unfairly neglected Babe, Pig in the City. My video pick this week is Babe, Pig in the City, which was Gene Siskel's choice for the best film of 1998, and it was also on my top 10 list. This sequel to the beloved Babe is one of those films that contains one visual surprise after another, as we learn the calamity has struck the Hoggett farm since Babe won that sheep herding contest in the first film. As Pig in the City opens, Farmer Hoggett is laid up from an accident and the farm faces foreclosure. So Mrs. Hoggett tries to save the day by exhibiting Babe in a distant fair. Alas, they miss their connecting flight, and so the two country dwellers find themselves homeless in the big city.
So you don't take pets? But he's just a little pig. Well, it's more of a dog, really. But he's practically human.
After Babe and Mrs. Hoggett finally find a hotel that caters to animals, here is the vista that greets Babe as he looks out his window.
Then the thought occurred to him, maybe it wasn't sheep herding. Maybe something else was required of him.
The film creates a fresh new cast of supporting characters, but my favorite is a holdover from the first one, Ferdinand the Duck, with a voice by Danny Mann.
Give us a peck. Come on, pig. Kiss, 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 kiss.
Babe, Pig in the City is available on DVD and tape, and it's my video pick of the week.